time doing that when I was young. How many of you spent a lot of time outside? Yeah, getting to know nature and just having fun. All right, that's great. Oh, I love that. So, I could throw a stone into Canada, and there were just the woods up here, huge, huge, huge woods, and a lot of places to explore, and some ways to have adventures. And the story I'm going to tell you today was a significant or major adventure that I had when I was about 6 years old. So, there's some tense moments, but not too scary, okay? So, bear trap story. My two sisters and my mother and I, on a beautiful June day, we traveled to my Aunt Martha's house, and she lived right down the road from us, and our plan was to do some exploring out in the woods and go and check out a hunting camp that was pretty deep in the woods and a place that we had not explored yet. So we got in the car and we headed on to Aunt Martha's house. Got there, got out, and my sister Gina and Debbie and I would get out of the car and like, yee-hoo! Because it was beautiful. Not too hot, not too cold. The sun was out. We're like, we are going to have a great time. We really wanted to see this hunting camp, and we wanted to know what it looked like around the camp, because it was an abandoned camp. Have you ever seen an abandoned camp out in the middle of the woods? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, they can be interesting. There's a lot of neat stuff in those camps. So, we started traveling down a path. It was about this wide. And as we got into the woods, the trees got thicker and thicker. And even though it was sunny out, you know, it got a little bit darker. And we were looking for a couple of things. One, we'd heard that there was some bear in the area. So we were checking for sign. And we were walking down the path, and on this tree, we saw this. Dug into the tree. These claw marks. And so we were like, oh. My sister Gina stopped and she said, John, look at that. What do you think that is? And I said, those are bear claws in the tree. They must be marking their territory. We're like, oh, we might see a bear. And we're like, yes, I hope so. We didn't have a camera or anything, so we just kept walking down the path. We wanted to get to the hunting camp. So, through the trees, we saw this little clearing, and we saw something gleaming, shining like a mirror, and we're like, what is that? So we kept walking down the trail, and all of a sudden, we see this old camp. And what the mirror was, or the sun was reflecting off this old metal roof. And as we were standing there, we heard this, for some reason, this wind just sort of came through. And the old metal roof started going. And my sister Debbie, who's the oldest, she goes, I don't know if I like this very much. She looked like she was getting a little nervous. And my sister Gina and I were like, oh, come on. This is going to be fun. So we see this old camp. And as we get closer to it, the front door is ripped off it. And it was just sort of dangling on one of the hinges. And so we stopped. We stopped and we looked around. We didn't go in yet. My sister Debbie, she was in the back, and she said, she goes, I don't think I want to go in. She goes, I don't like this. And my sister Gina and I, we said, wow, this looks like a lot of fun to us. We could see some things as we looked through the door. There were some old pictures, and there were these metal things that were sort of hanging from the walls. So we walked in, and it was fascinating. There was this old table that was all rickety, and a few old chairs in there that were, one had 3 legs and was sort of on its side. And on the walls, we saw a few old pictures. There was a picture of some hunters, 5 or 6 of them, and they had shot a deer, and they were all standing beside it smiling like this. And on the walls, we saw a few things hanging from the wall on nails, and I wasn't sure what they were. They looked kind of like this. They had like teeth.
I know what those are.
What do you think that is? Anybody raise their hand? Yes.
Teeth mark. It's one of those traps that you lay out under leaves.
Yes.
And something walks through and it bites the foot.
Yeah, this was in one of those old traps, and it looked a little scary to me. I didn't like it. So what I figured was this must have been an old trapper's camp. So they were not only was it an old deer camp, but they must have been trappers. And there was a stream nearby, and there were a few other of these old contraptions that were hanging from the wall. And so we looked around, and it was pretty interesting. We saw some old spoons and forks on the floor, and these old bunks that nobody had slept in. And so we looked around for a bit, and we rummaged through some things. We didn't take anything, we just left it there. And then we said, you know what, this is interesting, but there's a path behind this camp, and let's take it down to the stream, and let's see if we can see some bear. And I was like, yes, let's do that. My sister Debbie, she said, no, I think we should head back right now. And my sister Gina and I said, no way, Deb, this is going to be fun. We may see some bear, we'll see some deer, maybe a beaver.
I've seen a deer out.
And she said, okay, well, let's do it. So we start walking down the path. And again, these strong breezes were coming through. I don't know where they were coming from, but they were, and the trees were rattling all around. And my sister Debbie, I could tell she was a little nervous. She was touching her face like this, and she was going like that. She was a little nervous. And all of a sudden, my sister Gina says, John, stop. Look at that. And I looked over, and I looked down, and I went, oh my goodness.
A bear pen.
Do you think that's what it looks like? And I looked at my sister Gina, and she said, yes, that is a bear trap. And I said, oh my goodness. It was bigger than the ones that we saw that were in the camp. I'd never seen anything like this. The teeth on that were like this big. It was old and rusty. I don't know how she spotted it. She's an eagle eye. I can tell you that. She can spot anything. And so we looked over, and we were looking at it, and it was sitting right there like this. And I went over, and I looked at it, and Gina goes like this. She starts kicking it a little like that. Look, oh, jeepers, don't touch that thing. It looks menacing. And she said, oh, don't be afraid of that, she said, and she put her foot over it. She goes like this. And I said, Gina. And my sister Debbie's like, Gina, what are you doing? He's 6 years old. Don't get him near that trap. And Gina's like, oh, you don't need to worry about this trap, Debbie. It's nothing. She said it's nothing. She goes, watch, I'll show you. She goes, this is nothing. It's an old trap. It's not going to hurt anybody. And she looks at the trap, and she goes like this, I'm going to show you something right now, John. That's my first name, John. She called me John Boy sometimes, too. She goes, John Boy, well, watch this. And she took a look at that trap, and she, woohoo! She jumped right over it. And my sister Gina was like, Debbie! Debbie says, Gina, what are you doing? She goes, you're going to get hurt. Don't do that again. And she's about on the verge of tears. And Gina says, you don't need to worry about this. This is a trap. She pokes it with her foot. She says, you don't need to worry about anything. I'll show you. I'll do it again. Jump this baby again. And my sister Debbie goes, don't you do it, Gina. Somebody's going to get hurt. And Gina looks at her and she goes, oh, you just watch me. She takes a step back and she looks at that bear trap and she takes a run for it. Woohoo! And she goes over it. She says, did you see that, John? I said, I saw it, but I don't like it. She said, I said, you're going to get hurt, Gina. You know that. This could be dangerous. And she said, oh. It's not dangerous at all. And Debbie's in the background, no, John, don't you do it. And I said, well, what do you mean? And Gina looks at me and she said, John Boy, why don't you jump it, Mr. Tough Guy? And I said, no. That's too dangerous. I don't want to get hurt. Mom wouldn't like it. Mom would be mad. And Gina didn't say anything, and Debbie's in the background frantic, Gina, Don't you dare! Don't you dare egg him on to jump that thing! Don't you do it! I'll tell Mom! And Gina really just was ignoring Debbie. And does anybody have a sister like Gina? Anybody? Okay, anybody? How about a sibling like Debbie? Anybody have, yeah? You got twins? So Debbie's freaking out. You know what I mean? She's freaking out. She's like, oh, no, John, don't do it. And I said, oh, I'm not gonna do it. And Gina looks at me and she said, what are ya? Chicken! She goes, what are you, a big chicken, John boy? I said, I'm not a chicken. I've never been a chicken. I never will be a chicken. Don't you call me a chicken. Debbie's in the background. She's saying, Gina, that isn't going to work on him. He's too smart. And I'm telling Mom. Gina's ignoring Debbie. And she said, what are you, a chicken? And again, I looked at her and I said, I'm no chicken. I'm no chicken. I'll show you, Gina. And I said, I'll jump this thing. I'm going to jump and I'm going to show you I'm no chicken. And so Debbie hysterically goes, no! You're too young, John! And she says, I'm running back and I'm telling Ma! So Debbie takes off down the path. She's crying all the way. And as she's crying, I'm thinking, what did I just say? I don't think this is a good idea. Have you ever been really nervous?
Yeah.
Well, that was me. My heart was going like this. Bong, bong, bong. I'm shaking like this. You know how your coordination goes a little bit when you're really nervous? You get a little lightheaded. You're like, okay, I'm nervous, having trouble breathing a little fast. That was me. So I was a little shaky at this point. I should have had a clear head, but I didn't. So I took a look at it, and I said, Gina, I don't know, it probably isn't a good idea. You know, I could get hurt. And Gina looks at me one more time, and she says, John boy, what are you, big chicken? And I looked at her, and I stood tall, and I said, I'm no chicken, Gina. And I'm going to show you what I'm made of. So I looked at that bear trap. I looked at it very closely. And I said, I'm going to do this. And I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm shaking. I'm nervous. My feet are shaking. My knees are shaking. And I'm going like this, and I'm looking at it. I stop for a minute. Okay, can't do this. And then I go back, and Gina's behind me, and I hear. And then last time I heard the bagak, I took a step back, and I said, I'm going to do it, and I ran fast I could. Boom! I fell right on the bear trap. My right leg right on the bear trap. And I stand up and oh my gosh, my leg ripped through my pants. My leg is bleeding. My sister Gina takes one look at my knee and she looks at it and she goes, and she just takes off running down the path as fast as she can. Well, I'm 6 years old. Well, I'm bleeding. I can hardly walk. And both my sisters have left me. So I had to limp my way all the way back to the field. And my leg's bleeding and I'm in terrible pain. So I get close to the field next to their house and I can see my mother, Harriet, running down the field as fast as she can. John! And Gina, she ran inside. She was hiding under the bed somewhere. And my mother, she gets up there. She goes, John, I'm coming! And so she runs down and she gets close to me. She takes one look at me like this. She looks at my leg and she goes like this. She faints. Dead gold, out. Yes, I'll show you that. She faints. She's out like a light. And here I am, I'm bleeding. My leg's hurting like crazy. This is a real story. And thank goodness, Aunt Martha comes running down the field. She picks me up in her arms. She puts me in the car. She takes me to the Newport Hospital, where I got 18 stitches in my leg. Now, the doctor said I was very brave. And I also had to have about 5 tetanus shots, which were not fun at the same time. But I'm okay, and I walk fine, and I'm doing great. Now, a couple of things. My mother did get there about an hour after my stitches were in. They poured a bucket of water on her, and she woke up and had a nice pack, and she was able to come to the hospital, and she brought me some ice cream. And I didn't have to stay overnight. They let me go that afternoon, and my sister Gina was grounded for 2 months.
2 centuries!
Because egging on her 6-year-old brother. Yeah, and pain. Well, I know. I think it should have been more, too, but my mother, she was a very fair person. So, is there any moral of this story you can get out of, any meaning that you say, wow, you know, Mr. Alberghini shared this story, it's a true story, I'll show you the scar. Anything that you say, wow, you know, he probably should have learned something from this. Anything you think I should have learned? Yes.
You should have learned if you know it's something dangerous, just don't do it and walk away.
Even if you're...
Wow, you got it. Anybody else? Yes.
There's the saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
That's right, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.